In a small, quiet town surrounded by green fields and tall trees, there lived a young girl named Maya. She was different from the other kids in many ways, but one thing stood out more than anything else: her voice. Not just her singing or talking. Voice, but the way she carried herself, the way she spoke with passion, and the way her laughter filled every room she entered. Maya wasn't shy about sharing her thoughts, whether it was during class discussions, at family gatherings, or even while playing with her friends. Her energy was contagious, and those who loved her couldn't help but smile when she was around. But not everyone saw Maya's boldness as something positive. In fact, some people found it unsettling. They didn't know how to handle a child who was so unapologetically herself. This became painfully clear when Maya started attending elementary school. At first, her teachers were impressed by her eagerness to participate. Whenever they asked a question, Maya's hand shot up into the air like a rocket. If no one called on her, she would blurt out the answer anyway, unable to contain her excitement. Her classmates often laughed along with her antics, finding her enthusiasm amusing. But over time, certain adults grew tired of her behavior. One person in particular had a problem with Maya: Mrs. Thompson, her 5th grade teacher. Mrs. Thompson was a strict woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She believed in order and discipline, and she expected her students to follow rules without question. To her, Maya represented chaos, a disruption to the calm she tried so hard to maintain in her classroom. From the moment Maya walked into her class, Mrs. Thompson decided she needed to fix her. It began subtly. During lessons, whenever Maya raised her hand too quickly or answered a question before being called upon, Mrs. Thompson would give her a disapproving look. Sometimes she'd say things like, "Maya, please wait your turn," or, "Not everything has to be said right away." At first, Maya didn't think much of it. She figured Mrs. Thompson was just trying to teach her patience, and she resolved to try harder. But the comments didn't stop there. As weeks turned into months, Mrs. Thompson's remarks became more pointed. One day, during a group discussion about history, Maya excitedly shared her thoughts about why certain events happened the way they did. Her explanation was detailed and thoughtful, drawing nods of agreement from some of her classmates. But instead of praising her effort, Mrs. Thompson sighed loudly and said, "Maya, you're too loud. You don't need to shout to make a point." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Maya, whose cheeks burned red with embarrassment. The phrase, "too loud," stuck with Maya like glue. It echoed in her mind long after the bell rang and followed her home that evening. When she sat down for dinner with her parents, she barely touched her food. Concerned, her mother asked, "What's wrong, sweetheart? You seem upset." After hesitating for a moment, Maya burst into tears and told them what had happened at school. Her father listened intently, his brow furrowing with concern. When she finished speaking, he leaned forward and said gently, "Maya, do you know why lions roar?" Surprised by the random question, Maya shook her head. Her father smiled and continued, "Lions roar because they want their voices to be heard. They're strong, brave animals, and they use their roars to protect their pride and claim their territory. Being loud isn't always a bad thing. It means you have something important to say." Her mother chimed in, placing a comforting hand on Maya's shoulder. "Your dad's right," she said. "There's nothing wrong with having a big personality or expressing yourself. Just remember to respect others while doing it, but never let anyone make you feel ashamed of who you are." Though Maya appreciated her parents' words, the damage had already been done. The label of "too loud" haunted her throughout the school year. Classmates who once admired her confidence now teased her, repeating Mrs. Thompson's words whenever she spoke up. Some days, Maya wanted to shrink into the background, to disappear completely. Other days, she fought back, refusing to let their negativity bring her down. Despite the challenges, Maya refused to stay silent forever. Deep down, she knew her parents were right. Her voice mattered. Even if the world didn't understand her, yet she vowed to keep speaking up, keep sharing her ideas, and keep being unapologetically herself. Little did she know, this early struggle would shape her into the powerful force she was destined to become. Years later, as Maya reflected on her journey, She realized that Mrs. Thompson's criticism had unintentionally ignited a fire within her. What was meant to silence her only fueled her determination to be heard. And though she still faced obstacles along the way, each challenge pushed her closer to discovering her true purpose. Looking back, Maya understood that being too loud wasn't a flaw. It was her superpower. It was the very quality that allowed her to stand out, to inspire others, and to eventually rise above the noise. But none of that would have been possible without the struggles she endured in that little classroom all those years ago. Even today, whenever Maya hears someone tell a young girl to tone it down, she remembers her own story. She knows firsthand how damaging such words can be, but also how transformative they can become when met with courage and resilience. For Maya, the journey had only just begun. As Maya entered high school, she carried with her the weight of years spent being told she was too loud. Though her parents had reassured her time and again that her voice mattered, the sting of criticism lingered. She often found herself questioning whether it was worth speaking up at all. Would anyone listen? Did her opinions truly matter? These doubts swirled in her mind like storm clouds, threatening to drown out the fire within her. But life has a way of presenting opportunities when you least expect them. For Maya, that opportunity came in the form of the debate club. On a crisp autumn afternoon during her sophomore year, a flyer caught her eye as she walked through the crowded hallways. It read, "Join debate club, sharpen your mind, speak your truth." The words leapt off the page, sparking something deep inside her. Maybe this was her chance to channel her outspoken nature into something constructive, to prove that her voice wasn't just noise but a tool for change. With a mix of excitement and nervousness, Maya signed up. At the first meeting, she sat quietly in the corner, observing the other members. Some were seasoned debaters, confidently arguing their points with precision and flair. Others, like her, were newbies, fidgeting nervously and glancing around the room. When the moderator asked if anyone wanted to volunteer for a practice round, Maya hesitated. Her heart raced as memories of Mrs. Thompson's disapproving stares flashed before her eyes. But then she remembered her father's words about lions, roaring. Summoning every ounce of courage, she raised her hand. The topic was simple enough. Should schools abolish uniforms? Maya stood up, her palms sweaty, but her voice steady. As she began to speak, something remarkable happened. The room grew quiet and all eyes turned to her. Instead of feeling intimidated, Maya felt alive. She argued passionately, weaving together logic and emotion to make her case. By the time she finished, her teammates erupted into applause. One of the senior members even said, "Wow, where have you been hiding that voice?" That moment marked the beginning of a transformation. Over the next few months, Maya threw herself into the world of debate. She practiced tirelessly, researching topics late into the night and rehearsing her arguments in front of the mirror. Her coach, Mr. Harris, quickly noticed her potential. A tall man with kind eyes and a love for storytelling, he became a mentor figure to Maya. He saw beyond her bold exterior and recognized the depth of her intellect and empathy. "Maya," he said one day after a particularly intense practice session, "you have a gift. Your ability to connect with people, to make them feel what you're saying. It's rare. But remember, it's not just about winning debates. It's about using your voice to create understanding and inspire action." Encouraged by his belief in her, Maya decided to compete in regional tournaments. Competing wasn't easy. Many of her opponents were older, more experienced, and came from prestigious schools. At her first tournament, nerves got the better of her. During her opening statement, her voice trembled and she stumbled over her words. The judge's feedback was brutal. Too emotional, lacked structure. Maya left the event feeling defeated, wondering if she'd made a mistake. But failure only strengthened her resolve. Back home, she pored over recordings of past debates, analyzing what made great speakers effective. She worked on organizing her thoughts more clearly, balancing passion with logic. Slowly but surely, her skills improved. At the next tournament, she delivered a speech so compelling that the audience gave her a standing ovation. Though she didn't win, the experience taught her an invaluable lesson. Growth comes from perseverance. High school also brought friendships that changed Maya's life forever. Through the debate club, she met a group of students who shared her passion for justice and equality. There was Priya, a soft-spoken poet whose words could move mountains. Jamal, a tech whiz with dreams of building apps to help underserved communities. And Sophia, a fiery activist determined to fight climate change. Together, they formed a tight-knit circle, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating victories. One day, while brainstorming ideas for a school project, the group decided to tackle racial inequality, an issue close to Maya's heart. They created a multimedia presentation combining statistics, personal stories, and creative visuals to highlight systemic racism in education. When they presented it to their class, the impact was profound. Students who had never thought about these issues before were moved to tears. Teachers praised their work, calling it eye-opening and inspiring. Word of their project spread quickly, and soon, Maya and her friends were invited to present at a district-wide youth summit. Standing on stage in front of hundreds of people, Maya felt a surge of pride. This was what she had always wanted, to use her voice to spark meaningful conversations. As she spoke about the struggles faced by marginalized communities, she noticed heads nodding in agreement and hands reaching for tissues. When the presentation ended, the crowd erupted into applause, and several attendees approached her afterward to thank her. That day, Maya realized something important. Her voice wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who felt silenced, everyone who needed someone to speak for them. She understood now why her parents had encouraged her to keep speaking up, even when the world tried to shut her down. Her voice was a bridge, a way to connect, to educate, to heal. By the time she graduated high school, Maya had earned a reputation as a fearless advocate. She received awards for her debating skills and leadership, and her name appeared in local newspapers for her activism. But, more importantly, she had found her tribe, a group of people who accepted her for who she was and celebrated her boldness. They reminded her daily that being too loud wasn't a flaw, it was a strength. Looking back on her high school years, Maya knew she had grown in ways she never imagined. She had faced rejection, self-doubt, and fear, but she had also discovered resilience, purpose, and community. Those 4 years had shaped her into someone ready to take on the world. Little did she know, her journey was only beginning. Ahead lay college, career, and countless opportunities to continue using her voice, not just for herself but for others. And though challenges still awaited her, Maya faced them with confidence, knowing she was no longer alone. When Maya stepped onto the sprawling campus of her dream university, she felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The college promised endless opportunities to learn, to grow, and to make a difference, but it also came with its own set of challenges. For the first time in her life, Maya found herself surrounded by people from vastly different backgrounds, many of whom seemed confident and accomplished in ways she hadn't encountered before. It was thrilling, but it was also intimidating. Her freshman year began with a whirlwind of orientations, classes, and social events. In lecture halls filled with hundreds of students, Maya struggled to find her footing. Professors often posed thought-provoking questions during discussions, and Maya's hand would shoot up instinctively, eager to contribute. But more often than not, her raised hand went unnoticed. Instead, quieter students, those who rarely spoke, were called upon, their soft voices carrying across the room while Maya sat silently, frustration bubbling inside her. It wasn't just in class where Maya faced obstacles. During group projects, some teammates dismissed her ideas without much consideration. "That's too radical," one classmate said dismissively, when Maya suggested tackling systemic racism in their presentation on education reform. Another chimed in, "It's unrealistic, let's stick to safer topics." Though Maya tried to push back, explaining why these issues mattered, she eventually relented, feeling outnumbered and unheard. The rejection stung, but they didn't break her spirit. Determined to channel her energy into something meaningful, Maya joined the campus newspaper as a writer. At first, her articles focused on lighthearted topics like dorm life and extracurricular activities. But as she gained confidence, she began tackling heavier subjects: mental health struggles among students, racial bias in admissions policies, and the lack of resources for low-income scholars. Her pieces were raw, honest, and unapologetic, capturing the realities that many students faced but few dared to talk about openly. One article stood out above the rest. Titled, "Why Diversity Matters: A Call for Change." It highlighted the experiences of marginalized students on campus, including stories of microaggressions, exclusion, and institutional barriers. Maya interviewed dozens of students, weaving their voices into a powerful narrative that demanded attention. When the article was published, it sparked conversations across campus. Students shared it on social media, tagging friends and leaving comments like, "This is exactly how I feel." Faculty members praised her courage, and student organizations invited her to speak at rallies and panel discussions. For the first time since arriving at college, Maya felt seen. Her words had struck a chord, resonating with others who had long felt invisible. Encouraged by the response, she continued writing, using her platform to amplify underrepresented voices. Each article became a stepping stone, building her reputation as a bold and compassionate advocate for change. But Maya didn't stop there. Inspired by her success with the newspaper, she decided to take her advocacy further. She founded a student organization called Voices Unsilenced, dedicated to creating safe spaces for marginalized students to share their stories and push for systemic reforms. The group quickly gained traction, hosting workshops, film screenings, and open mic nights, where students could express themselves freely. Through Voices Unsilenced, Maya fostered a sense of community, reminding everyone involved that they weren't alone in their struggles. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. By her junior year, Maya had become a prominent figure on campus, a voice for those who felt silenced. Professors sought her input on diversity initiatives, and administrators consulted her when drafting new policies. Even local media outlets started reaching out, asking her to comment on national issues affecting young people. With each interview and public appearance, Maya honed her ability to articulate complex ideas clearly and passionately. Despite her growing influence, Maya remained humble. She knew that her journey wasn't solely about personal achievement. It was about lifting others up alongside her. That's why she made it a point to mentor younger students, especially women of color, helping them navigate the same challenges she had faced. Whether it was offering advice on how to handle difficult professors or encouraging them to pursue leadership roles, Maya poured her heart into supporting the next generation of changemakers. One pivotal moment came during her senior year when Maya organized a campus-wide protest against proposed budget cuts that would disproportionately affect minority programs. Standing on the steps of the administration building, megaphone in hand, she delivered a fiery speech that left the crowd buzzing with energy. "We are not asking for permission to be treated equally," she declared. "We are demanding justice, and we will not stop until we get it." The protest drew widespread attention, both within the university and beyond. News outlets covered the event, highlighting Maya's role as a leader and organizer. One reporter described her as a force of nature, noting how her passion and determination inspired others to join the cause. Within weeks, the administration announced that they would reconsider the budget cuts, a victory celebrated by students and faculty alike. As graduation approached, Maya reflected on her college years with pride. She had entered as a timid freshman, unsure of her place in the world, but she was leaving as a confident advocate ready to tackle bigger challenges. Her experiences had taught her that being too loud wasn't a weakness. It was a superpower. It allowed her to cut through the noise to demand attention and to challenge systems that perpetuated inequality. On the day of her commencement ceremony, Maya delivered the student keynote address. Dressed in her cap and gown, she stood before thousands of graduates, faculty members, and proud families, her voice steady and strong. "To my fellow graduates," she began, "I want you to remember this. Your voice matters. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter how hard they try to silence you, never let go of the belief that you have something important to say. Use your voice to fight for what's right, to stand up for those who can't, and to create a better future for everyone. The audience erupted into applause, many rising to their feet in admiration. As Maya walked off the stage, her parents rushed to hug her, tears streaming down their faces. They had always known she was destined for greatness, but seeing her achieve so much filled them with overwhelming pride. Though her college journey had come to an end, Maya knew her work was far from over. Armed with a degree in political science and a burning desire to effect change, she set her sights on the world beyond campus. She dreamed of becoming a journalist, shining a light on stories that needed telling, and advocating for policies that promoted equity and inclusion. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Maya was ready. After all, she had spent years proving that her voice could move mountains, and she wasn't about to stop now. After graduating from college, Maya stepped into the real world with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. She had big dreams, dreams of becoming a journalist who could amplify the voices of those who felt unheard, tackle pressing social issues, and hold power accountable. But the path to achieving those dreams was anything but smooth. The journalism industry was competitive, and breaking in as a young woman of color seemed like an uphill battle. Yet Maya refused to let doubt creep in. She reminded herself of all the times she'd been told she was too loud, and how she'd turned that criticism into fuel for her success. Maya began by sending out dozens of job applications to newspapers, magazines, and online platforms. Each rejection letter hit hard, making her question whether she was good enough. Some editors praised her writing samples but said they were looking for someone with more experience. Others didn't respond at all, leaving her emails unanswered. On particularly tough days, Maya would sit at her tiny apartment desk, staring at her laptop screen, wondering if she should give up. But then she'd think about the students she'd mentored, the articles she'd written, and the protests she'd led. She couldn't quit. Not when so many people were counting on her to keep fighting. Her breakthrough came unexpectedly. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Maya stumbled upon a post from a local news station looking for interns. Though it wasn't the glamorous national platform she'd envisioned, she decided to apply anyway. After submitting her resume and a heartfelt cover letter explaining her passion for storytelling, she waited anxiously for a response. To her surprise, the station called her back within days, offering her an unpaid internship. It wasn't much, but Maya saw it as a chance to prove herself, and she took it without hesitation. The internship was grueling. Maya spent long hours fact-checking stories, transcribing interviews, and running errands for senior reporters. At times, she felt invisible, reduced to fetching coffee or organizing files. But she stayed focused, knowing that every task brought her closer to her goal. Her persistence paid off when one of the station's lead reporters noticed her dedication. Impressed by her work ethic and sharp insights, he invited her to shadow him during field assignments. One assignment changed everything. The city was buzzing with tension following a controversial police shooting involving a black teenager. Protests erupted across neighborhoods, drawing national attention. When the reporter Maya had been shadowing fell ill, the producer asked her to step in, temporarily. Nervous but determined, Maya grabbed her notebook and headed to the scene. Standing amidst the crowd with a microphone in hand, she interviewed protesters, community leaders, and grieving family members. Her questions were thoughtful and empathetic, capturing the raw emotions of the moment. When the segment aired later that night, viewers were struck by Maya's authenticity. Unlike seasoned reporters who often maintained a detached tone, Maya spoke with genuine compassion, letting the pain and anger of the community shine through. Social media exploded with reactions, praising her ability to humanize the story. Viewers described her reporting as powerful, heartfelt, and necessary. The station received hundreds of messages thanking them for highlighting such an important issue and specifically commending Maya. Encouraged by the overwhelmingly positive response, the news director offered Maya a full-time position as a junior reporter. For the first time in her career, she felt truly valued. Over the next few months, she covered a wide range of topics, from housing crises to environmental justice. Her pieces stood out not just because of their depth, but because of the humanity she infused into each story. Whether she was interviewing a single mother struggling to afford rent or a scientist warning about climate change, Maya made sure her audience understood the real people behind the headlines. But Maya's rise wasn't without challenges. As a young black woman in a predominantly white newsroom, she faced skepticism and resistance. Some colleagues questioned her credibility, dismissing her ideas as too emotional or biased. During editorial meetings, she often found herself having to defend her pitches, even when they were backed by solid research. There were moments when she felt isolated, wondering if she'd ever truly belong. Still, she refused to let negativity dim her light. Instead, she leaned on the lessons she'd learned throughout her life, that her voice mattered, and she owed it to herself and others to keep speaking up. Her big break came when a national talk show host saw one of her reports on systemic racism in healthcare. The host was moved by Maya's ability to break down complex issues into relatable narratives. Within weeks, Maya received an invitation to appear as a guest commentator on the show. Nervous yet thrilled, she prepared meticulously, ensuring she could articulate her points clearly and confidently. When the day arrived, she walked onto the set, heart pounding, and took her seat alongside seasoned journalists and experts. As the cameras rolled, Maya spoke with clarity and conviction, addressing the topic with both intellect and empathy. She shared personal anecdotes, weaving them seamlessly into broader discussions about policy reform and societal change. By the end of the segment, the host turned to her and said, "Maya, you have a gift. Your perspective is exactly what we need more of in mainstream media." Those words validated years of hard work and sacrifice. The appearance catapulted Maya into the spotlight. Offers poured in from networks and publications eager to feature her insights. Within months, she landed a role as a co-host on a nationally syndicated morning show focused on social justice issues. Suddenly, Maya was reaching millions of viewers every day, discussing everything from education reform to criminal justice to gender equality. Her charisma and authenticity resonated with audiences, earning her legions of fans who admired her courage and honesty. Yet, despite her growing fame, Maya remained grounded. She knew that her platform came with responsibility. Every interview, every article, every speech was an opportunity to educate, inspire, and advocate for change. She used her influence to highlight grassroots movements, amplify marginalized voices, and challenge harmful stereotypes. Her guests ranged from activists and policymakers to artists and everyday heroes, each bringing unique perspectives to the table. One of the most memorable episodes featured a panel of young activists fighting for climate action. As Maya listened to their stories, tears welled up in her eyes. She thought about her own journey, the struggles, the triumphs, the moments when she wondered if anyone would ever listen. Now here she was, providing a stage for others to share their truths. It was a full circle moment, reminding her why she had chosen this path in the first place. By the end of her second year as a national figure, Maya had become a household name. People tuned in not just for information, but for inspiration. Schools incorporated her interviews into lesson plans, parents encouraged their children to watch her segments, and aspiring journalists looked up to her as a role model. Critics occasionally accused her of being too outspoken or too radical, but Maya brushed off their comments. She knew that true progress required boldness, and she was willing to take the heat if it meant moving society forward. Reflecting on her journey, Maya realized how far she'd come since those early days of self-doubt. She had transformed from a girl once labeled too loud into a voice that commanded attention and respect. And though she had achieved more than she ever imagined, she knew her mission was far from over. There were still battles to fight, stories to tell, and lives to touch. With unwavering determination, Maya continued to use her voice, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in the power of truth and justice. By the time Maya reached her 30s, she had become a household name, a symbol of resilience, courage, and authenticity. Her face was familiar to millions, her voice recognized by people from all walks of life. Yet, despite her fame and success, Maya never lost sight of her purpose: to use her platform to advocate for justice, equality, and humanity. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to make an impact, and Maya seized them with relentless determination. One of the defining moments of her career came when she was asked to moderate a presidential debate. It was a role that required not just skill but immense composure, as moderators were tasked with keeping candidates on track, asking tough questions, and ensuring fairness. When the invitation arrived, Maya hesitated. The weight of responsibility felt enormous. Could she handle the pressure? Would she be criticized for being too aggressive or too soft? But then she remembered her father's words about lions roaring. If ever there was a moment to let her voice roar, this was it. On the night of the debate, Maya stood backstage, taking deep breaths to calm her nerves. As she walked onto the stage, clad in a sharp navy blue suit, the crowd erupted into applause. Cameras flashed, lights blazed, and the energy in the room buzzed with anticipation. For a brief second, Maya paused, looking out at the sea of faces before her. She thought about the little girl who had once been told she was too loud. In class, the same girl who had fought tooth and nail to find her place in the world. Now here she was, standing on one of the biggest stages imaginable, ready to guide a conversation that would shape the future of a nation. The debate unfolded with intensity. Candidates sparred over policies ranging from healthcare to immigration, their answers often veering into personal attacks. Throughout it all, Maya remained composed, steering the discussion back to substance whenever emotions threatened to derail it. Her questions were incisive yet respectful, cutting through political jargon to get to the heart of the issues. At one point, when a candidate evaded a question about climate change, Maya leaned forward slightly and said, "With respect, sir, I believe the American people deserve a direct answer. Will you commit to addressing this crisis within your first term?" The audience erupted into cheers, and social media lit up with praise for her boldness. That night, Maya didn't just prove herself as a moderator, she proved herself as a leader. Critics who had once dismissed her as too emotional or unqualified were forced to acknowledge her professionalism and poise. Viewers flooded social media with messages thanking her for holding politicians accountable and making the debate accessible to ordinary citizens. One tweet summed it up perfectly. "Maya isn't just moderating tonight. She's leading us toward real conversations about what matters." The aftermath of the debate elevated Maya's status even further. Invitations poured in from global forums, universities, and organizations eager to hear her speak. She traveled the world, delivering keynote addresses at conferences focused on human rights, education reform, and women's empowerment. In every speech, Maya emphasized the importance of using one's voice, not just for personal gain, but for collective progress. "When we speak up," she told audiences, "we create ripples that can turn into waves of change. Never underestimate the power of your story." But Maya knew that true change couldn't happen without action. Inspired by her own experiences, she launched a nonprofit organization called Roar for Change, dedicated to mentoring young people, particularly girls of color, in journalism and activism. The program offered workshops, scholarships, and internships, equipping participants with the tools they needed to navigate industries where they were often underrepresented. Maya personally mentored several students, sharing her knowledge and encouraging them to embrace their uniqueness. "You don't have to shrink yourself to fit in," she told them. "The world needs your full self." Through Roar for Change, Maya also partnered with schools to implement curriculums that highlighted diverse voices and perspectives. Textbooks and lesson plans began including stories of trailblazers who looked like the students reading them, people who had overcome adversity to achieve greatness. Maya believed that representation mattered deeply, not just in media, but in education. By exposing young minds to a variety of narratives, she hoped to inspire them to dream bigger and aim higher. As her influence grew, Maya became a trusted advisor to policymakers and activists alike. Presidents sought her counsel on racial equity initiatives. CEOs consulted her on corporate diversity strategies, and grassroots organizers relied on her guidance to amplify their causes. Her ability to bridge divides and foster understanding made her invaluable in spaces where collaboration was key. Whether she was facilitating dialogue between opposing groups or advocating for systemic reforms, Maya approached every task with empathy and integrity. Despite her achievements, Maya remained acutely aware of the challenges facing marginalized communities. She used her platform to shine a light on issues that mainstream media often ignored, from the struggles of undocumented immigrants to the plight of indigenous peoples fighting to preserve their land. One of her most impactful campaigns focused on criminal justice reform. Partnering with formerly incarcerated individuals, Maya produced a documentary series that exposed the harsh realities of mass incarceration. The series sparked widespread outrage, prompting calls for legislative changes and increased funding for rehabilitation programs. Maya's work wasn't limited to advocacy. She also prioritized storytelling. Believing that art had the power to heal and unite, she collaborated with filmmakers, musicians, and authors to create content that celebrated diversity and challenged stereotypes. A poetry anthology she co-edited, titled Voices Unsilenced, Stories of Strength and Survival, became a bestseller, resonating with readers across generations. Proceeds from the book funded scholarships for aspiring writers from underserved backgrounds. Even as accolades piled up, awards, honorary degrees, magazine covers, Maya stayed humble. She credited her success to the people who had supported her along the way, her parents who had instilled in her the belief that her voice mattered, her mentors who had guided her through difficult times, and the countless individuals whose stories she had shared. "I'm not special because of me," she often said. "I'm special because of us, the community that lifts each other up." Perhaps the most profound testament to Maya's impact came during a visit to her hometown. Walking through the streets she had once roamed as a child, she noticed something remarkable. Murals depicting her likeness adorned building walls, accompanied by quotes from her speeches. Local schools had named auditoriums and libraries after her, honoring her contributions to education and activism. Children ran up to her, asking for autographs and selfies, their eyes wide with admiration. Seeing how far she had come, and how far her journey had inspired others, brought tears to her eyes. In private moments, Maya reflected on the irony of her life. Once labeled too loud, she had now become a voice that millions listened to willingly. What had once been seen as a flaw was now celebrated as her greatest strength, and though she had achieved extraordinary things, she knew her work was far from finished. There were still injustices to confront, battles to fight, and hearts to touch. With unwavering resolve, Maya vowed to keep pushing forward, to keep roaring for as long as it took. Because for Maya, being too loud wasn't just a label, it was a legacy. As Maya entered her 40s, she found herself at a crossroads. Her career had reached heights she once thought unimaginable. She was celebrated as a journalist, an activist, and a voice for the voiceless. Yet, despite all her accomplishments, Maya felt a deep longing to leave behind something more enduring, something that would continue to inspire generations long after she was gone. She wanted her legacy to be more than headlines or awards. She wanted it to be a living, breathing force that empowered others to find their own voices. The idea for her memoir came during a quiet evening at home. Sitting by the window with a cup of tea, Maya flipped through old photo albums her mother had sent her. There were pictures of her as a child, smiling brightly in school plays, standing proudly with spelling bee trophies, and laughing uncontrollably with friends. But there were also reminders of darker times. Report cards scrawled with comments like disruptive and too loud, along with faded memories of Mrs. Thompson's disapproving stares. As she looked at those images, Maya realized how much her journey had shaped her, and how important it was to share it with the world. She titled the memoir, Too Loud, Finding My Voice in a World That Tried to Silence Me. Writing it wasn't easy. Some days reliving painful moments brought tears streaming down her face. Other days, recalling triumphs filled her with pride and gratitude. Through it all, Maya poured her heart into every chapter, weaving together personal anecdotes, lessons learned, and reflections on resilience. The book wasn't just about her struggles. It was about the power of self-belief and the importance of using one's voice to create change. When Too Loud hit shelves, it became an instant bestseller. Readers from around the globe connected with Maya's story, seeing pieces of themselves in her journey. Parents bought copies for their daughters, hoping to instill confidence and courage. Teachers used it in classrooms to spark discussions about identity, diversity, and perseverance. Critics praised its honesty and called it a love letter to anyone who has ever been told they are too much. For Maya, the most rewarding part was hearing from young readers who said her words gave them hope. "I thought I was alone," one teenager wrote in a letter. "Your story made me realize my voice matters too." Inspired by the response, Maya expanded her efforts to ensure her message reached even wider audiences. She partnered with schools across the country to develop curriculum centered on empowerment and advocacy. Students studied her memoir alongside other works by trailblazers like Maya Angelou and Malala Yousafzai, learning how to channel adversity into strength. In workshops, Maya encouraged students to write their own stories, helping them see the value in their experiences. "Every voice is important," she told them. "Even if no one else is listening yet, keep speaking. Someone will hear you eventually." Beyond education, Maya continued to champion causes close to her heart. She launched a global initiative called Roar Worldwide, aimed at addressing systemic inequalities in areas like healthcare, education, and environmental justice. The program brought together activists, policymakers, and community leaders to collaborate on solutions tailored to local needs. One of its flagship projects focused on providing clean water access to rural communities in Africa. Maya traveled to villages, meeting with families whose lives had been transformed by the installation of wells. Seeing children drink fresh water, for the first time, reminded her why she did what she did, not for fame or recognition, but to make the world a better place. Her advocacy extended to the digital realm as well. Recognizing the influence of social media, Maya created online platforms where people could share their stories and connect with resources. A hashtag campaign, "I Am Too Loud," went viral, encouraging individuals to embrace their boldness and challenge societal norms. Thousands participated, posting videos and messages celebrating their uniqueness. Celebrities joined in, sharing their own experiences of being told they were too much. What started as a simple hashtag evolved into a movement, a reminder that being unapologetically yourself is a form of rebellion against systems designed to silence you. Even as Maya's public life flourished, she cherished the quieter moments with loved ones. Her parents, now older, remained her biggest supporters. They attended events, cheered her on during speeches, and offered advice when she faced tough decisions. Friends joked that Maya's phone was always ringing, whether it was a student seeking guidance or a colleague asking for input on a project. Despite her busy schedule, she made time for everyone, knowing that connection was key to sustaining meaningful relationships. In her later years, Maya began thinking about retirement, but not in the traditional sense. Instead of stepping away completely, she envisioned transitioning into a role where she could focus solely on mentoring the next generation. She purchased a small farm outside the city, turning it into a retreat center for aspiring activists and storytellers. Surrounded by nature, participants engaged in workshops, discussions, and creative exercises designed to help them discover their purpose. Maya led sessions herself, sharing wisdom gained from decades of experience. Watching young leaders blossom under her guidance filled her with immense joy. Though age slowed her pace slightly, Maya refused to let it dim her spirit. At 75, she delivered a TED Talk titled "The Power of Being Too Loud." Standing on stage, her silver hair gleaming under the lights, she spoke with the same passion and conviction that had defined her career. "They called me too loud because I refused to shrink myself to fit their expectations," she said. "But being too loud isn't a flaw, it's a gift. It means you have something worth saying. So don't stop roaring. The world needs your voice. By the time Maya passed away at 82, she had touched countless lives. Memorials were held worldwide, honoring her contributions to journalism, activism, and education. Schools named buildings after her, streets bore her name, and statues stood in her likeness. But perhaps her greatest legacy was intangible. The ripple effect of her courage inspiring others to speak up, stand tall, and fight for what they believed in. Years later, a young girl sat in a classroom reading Maya's memoir for the first time. As she turned the final page, tears streamed down her cheeks. She closed the book, clutching it tightly to her chest, and whispered, "If she could do it, so can I." And in that moment, Maya's roar echoed once again, carrying forward the promise that no voice should ever be silenced. Not hers, not yours, not anyone's. Because being too loud isn't just okay, it's necessary.